So, you're busy and you're really helpful and you want to help. It's that good girl, isn't it? But also I think girls, the internal, because you're not, being disruptive and bored and messing around. And, my son's a lot more shouty and a lot more, you can see him not sit still and he's messing around. And it's the voices in the girls' heads. And I think that it makes it more dangerous a lot of the time because it's so busy as a girl in your head. And as I said, that kind of putting yourself down all the time, constant criticism. It's like there's a person in your head just going, no, you're not good enough. Yeah, you might have done that, but you could have done better. I know that, someone's just looked at you and they don't like you and they've said that, they're thinking this. And it's like this evil wizard that just sits in your brain constantly every time you feel good or done something good going, yeah, but. And I think that's the hard part for girls.
Welcome to All Aboard, where we help parents navigate the ADHD journey. Whether you're at the beginning of this journey asking what now, or you've trodden this path for a while and are wondering what's next, All Aboard ADHD is here for you. We will bring you key information from expert interviews, inspiring special guest stories, and parents sharing their real-life lived experience to help you feel less alone. I'm Claire, and today we'll be talking to special guest Emma Sayle. Emma is one of the UK's leading female entrepreneurs. She made her name launching the global female empowerment brand Killing Kittens in 2005, which now has over 200,000 members with events across the globe. Emma also runs the Sisterhood, a group of women boldly competing in extreme and adventure sports. The group to date has raised over 1 million for various women's charities. Emma does all of this whilst juggling being a mum to 3 neurospicy children, as well as being chair of the school PTA. Emma was originally diagnosed with ADHD in her early 30s and is here to share her story with us today. Welcome aboard, Emma.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So can you begin by telling us about when you were diagnosed with ADHD, what led to you getting that diagnosis and how it felt when you had that answer?
I'm 47 now, so I was 31. And it was... I was being interviewed by a Daily Mail journalist and she had just done a big feature on ADHD. And she just said, I hope you don't mind me asking, but have you got ADHD? Have you been diagnosed with it? And I was like, no. And we had this whole conversation and she just said the way, I think when you know it and you see it and you know all the little signs and stuff, you can see it so much in other people. And she was like, the speed at which I talk, jumping around the topics, it's like twitching. And I said, a few people, it was because it was one of those things that no one really knew about. It was that old school disruptive boy. You were naughty, you weren't very academic, and you were disruptive. And that's what you kind of think, it's a boy problem. And so a few people had said, not joked, you're very ADHD, or, so it kind of wasn't the first time it had been said. And I just thought, let's be assessed. So did, but it was sort of quite old school because what was that, 16, 17 years ago? And did it, and it came back, positive. And I just completely ignored it. It was sort of, I think I was single, I was going 3,000 miles per hour. I was kind of on my own, just work with sort of, tunnel vision. So it wasn't really something that I needed to, at the time, think about. It wasn't like I was struggling or, it was kind of, I was sort of oblivious. And I think it was amazing for where I was at that point in my life. So it wasn't kind of one of those things where you get diagnosed when the overwhelm is there and you're struggling and you want it all to make sense. It was kind of, cool, on. And I was living on my own, and I think you look back and actually that was everything. It was kind of, I was so used to being really busy and loads of people and totally overwhelmed in life, but my home has always been silence and reading and, never had the parties at home and, well, different story now with 3 kids. But so I kind of, in a weird way, I had created my life and work life to fit my brain and to fit where I worked. So when I was diagnosed, I wasn't struggling. It was sort of, I was living in the world that I had without really thinking about, created that suited me, and my work suited me. I'm still doing it. And, because it's crazy and it's changing all the time and constantly evolving. So every day it's like a new business, which fits it as well. So that's when I was diagnosed the first time. And then the second time was this year, when the overwhelm at the beginning of the year was massive. And it was, and it's been 4 years, and it's had paranoid anxiety. And about 4 years ago, I went on HRT because I thought, that was needed. And what happened is that fixed it to a certain extent. And like I wasn't peeing in the middle of the night, and the brain fog wasn't as big, and the anxiety wasn't as, the paranoia went, that black toad of paranoia. But what didn't go, and having 3 kids that, they're 11, 9 and 7, was as they get older, they get louder. And that, I'd find myself at the beginning of the year sort of sat on the kitchen floor, just literally twitching, just as if I was completely short-circuiting, because I just couldn't deal with that level of all 3 of them. And there was nowhere to go and regulate or calm, and I just thought, this is more than perimenopause. This is, and I hadn't really, thought about actually how much perimenopause, takes what little dopamine you have with ADHD anyway, and totally screws it up. So you go on a different, you don't have much dopamine, and then perimenopause comes along and, takes the rest of it. So you're left with sort of, like I said, short circuiting. And actually it was the head of, Phil, the head of ADHD 360, we were out one night, and I was saying, because I've always been anti-meds. I hate taking paracetamol unless I literally can't see out my eyes. And I said, but I just feel, to be the best parent, that I've got to bench myself type thing, and I need to be the best version of myself in order to be able to parent 3 kids who are definitely neurospicy. And he said, he said, if you were struggling to breathe, would you take the inhaler? And I said, yeah. He said, well, this isn't sort of big pharma where, a lot of antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds and other meds where, the side effects are massive. So you then have to take more meds for those side effects. And, that it's replacing, the ADHD meds are replacing what you don't have already. A bit like HRT is replacing the hormones. So, and it just made me go, yeah, actually, it's time. And but in order to get that meds, because obviously I couldn't find any diagnosis from 17 years ago because my admin is crap. And so it was, there was no chance of me. So I went through the ADHD 360. So it's better to have their assessment. And so, when, Phil was like, got me in, and normally the assessments take about an hour and a half, can be 2 hours, and sort of within 30 minutes, it was like, it's fairly obvious. So, so that was the second one. And that was, when, straight away, tried the meds, and that was a game changer for me.
It's so relatable, everything you're saying. And it's funny you use the analogy about that Phil gave you. I say that too, about inhalers, because I'm asthmatic, and I came to get my ADHD diagnosis by my son. And when he was first, we were looking at medication for him. It was the inhaler analogy that I had in my own head. I wouldn't ever deny myself using an inhaler to help my breathing. And I think there's so much stigma around medication, isn't there, particularly for whether that's mental health issues or for neurodiversity. And I think it's just such a good way of looking at it, because it really is that life-changing. It's that significant. And so much of what you were saying then, I was like nodding along, because not that I was diagnosed in my early 30s initially as you were, but I do think it's really fascinating, isn't it, when you're at a particular stage in your life and unknowingly you've kind of created an environment that just really works for your brain, and you're kind of, I guess, thriving in it. Like my career in those days, I was working in TV. It's super fast paced, very novel, constantly changing, working to deadline, very active, kind of ticking loads of boxes without having to really think too much or have any realization that my brain worked differently until then, as you say, that you are a mum and you're juggling the needs of your children, and if they're neurospicy themselves, plus declining estrogen, and it's just that overwhelm. And you said twitching, and I thought, oh my god, I've had moments where I've been sort of physically on my knees, and I described it to someone the other day. It's like my brain is so overwhelmed that it's like my brain is swollen in my skull. There's like no
it's
space.
buffering.
Yeah.
You're literally like a computer does. And I'd forget stuff, and I never forget stuff. I'd forget meetings and a few lunches I was meant to be at. And it was at that point I thought, no, this is too far. I've always been on top of everything, even if I'm doing 3,000 things. And it was like, I'd literally sit there sometimes and go, it's totally buffering. And there's nothing coming out. I can't speak, I can't think. It's just sort of gone into like freeze mode. Yeah,
buffering is such a good way of putting it. I very much can relate to that, and I'm definitely experiencing the freeze that you're talking about. And you sort of touched on obviously your own kids there from a neurospicy perspective, but if you look back on your own childhood and your younger years, obviously first ADHD diagnosis, how does having that lens, the ADHD lens you've got now, help you make sense of how you experienced the world as a child, both at school and sort of beyond into like adolescence?
I think it was, like looking back, and I'm like high functioning, so I was straight A's and a real maths geek. So looking back, it's the perfectionist side. It's the, it's wanting to be the best and time, and nothing's good enough. And you see it's the self-doubt. It's the, I don't talk about, I've always spoken about like having 7 people in my head, that if one fear gets a bit gobby, then the other one will say, sit down and have a cup of tea. And it's funny because I've always joked about that, but actually that is ADHD. It's like, that's the thing. You've got so much noise telling you you're not good enough, and you're, and someone's looked at you in a funny way, so they must be thinking this. And, it's that kind of, the sensitivity to everything. You walk into, I was always I was at boarding school for 10 years, and I was always the one looking after everyone, making sure everyone's all right, because it was sort of that you walk into a room, and I still do it, and I can feel everyone's energy, and I can think, oh, they don't look happy, or they don't. So you end up walking out of social situations are just completely drained, because it's like I've taken on everyone, all the energy, whether I've spoken to them or not. You just feel it, and you can see it in the way someone's looking. My husband's on the other end of slightly autistic, so just sees nothing. He comes out fine. I think it was a lot of that, of just proper, beating myself up daily on what I could do better and what not good enough, and just taking on everyone else's issues and problems and looking after them, and on that emotional side. And I think also there's that where you just don't quite feel, you don't feel like you fit in. It's like I was, I look back and, there were groups at school. It was a girls' boarding school. There were loads of like cliques, but you had like, the maths ones, and you had the international students, and you had the sports ones, and you had the really cool ones. And I look back and I remember being at school and just being friends with everyone and just sort of floating, and not quite, which was quite, you look back and go, that's great. And in life, that's great. I'm still like that. But never feeling like you fitted in one group. So a bit of an outsider, where you just kind of thought, well, I'm not like them. But you didn't know you couldn't, as a kid, you don't have any idea why. And that emotional side of it is, like I remember arguing a lot, family and stuff, and it wouldn't take much to set me off, because I would just take things so personally, any little comment, and that was the end of the world. Yeah, so it's sort of, when you look back, it's exhausting. And you just want to, scoop your 11-year-old, 12-year-old self up and just tell them it's going to be all right. And there's nothing wrong with you. And you don't need to be any more. You're more than enough. So, yeah, I think that's, even though, I loved school, I did really well. I was a captain of sport, but then again, that's it. But then I had 10 years of eating issues on top of it all. So it took, a long time, and actually a lot of hypnotherapy in my 20s, which I love, to then kind of have that sort of calmness and the awareness of, I am enough, and that I don't need, and that's it. There was nothing wrong with me. And we were saying, I did talk on Monday, actually, it's about aging disgracefully. And And we're just saying that. I said, I remember looking back at, I look back at pictures of me in my 20s. They flash up on Facebook, whatever, and, great figure and stunning. And I was like looking, going, but I look at it and remember the time and think, shit, I felt like the size of a house and ugly. And I look at these pictures going, oh my God. It's so when I see the pictures, you just go, I couldn't look any hotter for me. When you look back and through a lens of being totally aware and knowing how ADHD works, it all makes sense. But it's just sad that, as kids we don't know, and especially girls, and especially the high functioning ones. And we've my little one who's 7, she's a mini me. And she beats herself up, but she's doing, her last teacher parent thing. The teacher was saying that she's basically teaching us maths. She just wants more super challenges. She gets back here and I see her writing and she's done like 5 times table up to 99. And it's the flashbacks of like, wow, she is just, but as the school saying, and they're really good because they know it, the head of SENS know she is, but they can't put her through on that testing because it doesn't tick the boxes. And and in my essay saying, because the other two are, they're a mash-up. They've got the ASD and then it's quite obvious on the ASD front, the anxiety and just the way they are. So just saying, I'm putting them all through, and, Lily and Raph, 11 and 9-year-olds won't have a problem. She said, they'll go through. She said, but I don't think MJ, the little one, will go through. And I just replied going, yeah, I know she won't go through. 100% they won't, it won't go through. I said, because it's that high functioning ADHD girl, they still haven't got a clue about on the testing front. And I said, yeah, been there, done that, got the brownie badges. So, but at the end of the day, it's sort of, I don't want her on meds as a kid. I wouldn't have wanted, I didn't need them till this year when you then have the kids in the perimenopause personally. But it's just sort of, I think it's being there and aware, giving me that awareness of her, because I've lived and breathed it, that then can help me parent, her with that awareness. And she already has that awareness. She talks about it. The way she talks is like a 40-year-old. She just sort of, explains her brain and goes, that's the way my brain works. And it's just really busy. And sometimes she'll be like, but my brain's not going to go to sleep. I've got numbers like going round and round. And then or a song and I'm singing the same line of a song. And it's funny because she goes, and then, Raph, the thing with Raph, he's not like me. I will just, say it and I'll be, and I'll use all my words. But he just gets really angry because he can't say it. But that's not actually him. And then he's fine and saying sorry. She has this amazing way of explaining everything, and she's 7. And I think that's, that as a mum, that's kind of all I can do, just that, so she has that awareness that there's nothing wrong with her.
Which is such an amazing thing, because you said at the beginning of that, it's like wanting to scoop your 11-year-old self up. And I think that's very much what we end up doing as parents, isn't it? And I'll come back to the points you're making about your daughter in a moment, because I think that's really important. But I just wanted to kind of touch on that sense of, you want to scoop your younger self up. So if you look back at yourself then, what do you wish that your parents or your teachers had understood at that point, having done the work and understanding of yourself now as an adult? And obviously you're imparting that on your daughter and your children, but what do you wish they had understood for that 11-year-old you?
I think that just because you look like you're achieving it all, you get left to your own devices. Oh, she's fine. It's Emma, she's fine. She's always fine. And I think it's that, there are some kids that are very good at being upset and being sad and having problems and, making the noise that gets them the attention. But you would say just be aware of the overachievers who seem like they've got it all together, because they're normally the ones that are left on their own. Because actually, I would say most of the time they're probably the ones that need more help internally. The internal voice going on will be strong.
Yeah, you're so right. That was me when I was younger as well. lots of what you're saying resonates with me. That sense of, I've always been massively independent, but the more independent you are, the more people just think, oh, she's fine. She'll be all right. She'll sort it.
She's always fine.
And actually, then it's even harder, isn't it, to ask for the help? So going back to what you were saying about your daughter then, because obviously ADHD in girls and women is so overlooked. And like for many, me and you're not diagnosed till later in life. And what you said about your daughter kind of going under the radar with this, even though everybody knows what those needs are, is a really big thing, isn't it? I mean, when I was looking into diagnosis for my daughter, she's 10, it actually took me a really long time to take that step, because for two reasons. One, I was trying not to make the shoe fit, because obviously I didn't, with everything that I know and all my experiences, I didn't want to just make an assumption and that assumption be wrong. But also because she's exactly like your daughter, you know, high masking, academically bright, really mathematical. And then I really had to think long and hard about the process in which I go through to, if, you know, she does have ADHD, obviously she has since had a diagnosis, but to get that, because I needed to make sure, I knew that school would say something really different to what I was saying, and therefore had to go down a different sort of pathway, if you like, to make sure that those other environments in which she exists were represented. And also the test, like the QB test, was part of her diagnostic sort of process, because I didn't want her to be missed. And that's the thing, isn't it? Like more and more girls are going under the radar. So how do you think for yourself that your own gender shaped your experience and the way you were understood? How do you think being a girl played into that for you?
I think it was part of it, because you know, girls are busy being helpful, boys are busy being disruptive. And, you know, that's actually kind of how, you know, we knew really early doors with all our three. I mean, literally they were probably two at nursery, because they were busy, and the feedback was always like, they're on their feet. They're the most helpful ones. They're the most helpful kids at nursery, and we have to give them jobs all the time. And these nursery managers are telling you this as if your kid's amazing, and inside I'm like, oh, fuck, you know. And I said, James, my husband, I went, this is not a good thing. This is not a good thing, because I know what's coming. This, you know, this isn't like, it's because they can't sit still. And they are, you know, even now, and they've always been really helpful. And even the 11-year-old boy, his new teacher in September, she's brilliant, but clocked him straight away and said, I give him all jobs. He gets, as soon as he walks in the classroom, he gets the jobs, and he's really helpful, and he wants more jobs. And he, you know, it's that. And I think girls as well. So, you know, you're busy and you're really helpful and you want to help. It's that good girl, isn't it? And but also I think girls, the internal, because you're not, you know, being disruptive and bored and messing around. And, you know, my son's a lot more shouty and a lot more, you know, you can see him not sit still and he's messing around. And it's the voices in the girls' heads. And I think that it makes it more dangerous a lot of the time, because it's so busy as a girl in your head. And as I said, that kind of putting yourself down all the time, constant criticism. It's like there's a person in your head just going, no, you're not good enough. Yeah, you might have done that, but you could have done better. And know that, you know, someone's just looked at you and they don't like you, and they've said that, you know, they're thinking this. And it's like this evil wizard that just sits in your brain constantly every time you feel good or done something good, going, yeah, but. And I think that's the hard part for girls on that front. And I think also you then combine it with societal pressures, just the way the messaging is to girls. You know, it's something by the age of 7, girls already think they can't do what boys do, which really annoys me. And that's the thing. So you're fighting, not only are you fighting that the internal voices and noise going on at 3,000 miles per hour, you're fighting the messaging you'll get from the outside world that you're not good enough, that you're not, you know, that you're kind of second rate, that boys are, you know, are better than you, that it's sort of the boys' world, and it's, you know, they make the rules, and, you know, and everything from kind of, you sort of you've got to find a man. You've got to, you know, get a boyfriend, it's sort of, you know, all that messaging is that it's on boys' terms. They're the ones with the control. They're the ones with the power, and you're at their mercy. And yeah, so I think that, and just the safety side of it is, you know, as you get older and teen girls, and, you know, even now you sort of, you know, violence against girls and harassment, and, you know, we have to think in a different way. We have to think, when we walk down the streets, if you're walking home, I always remember in London having my door key. I always have my door key in my fist with the spiky bit up. It was just what you did, after 9 o'clock at night. It's these, it's sort of when you have all that noise as well, being a girl that boys don't have, you put that in with that internal voice, the ADHD girl voice in your head. It's just a melting pot of twitching, as I said earlier.
It's a good way to describe it. And I think that, as you said, that internal noise, along with the masking, as you described it, of the kind of being helpful, the keeping yourself busy, the being the good girl, underneath that mask, then we're hiding the struggles, aren't we? We're hiding the challenges. But I'm just wondering if there are things that you struggled with as a child that you found challenging that actually now, as an adult, you consider those to be your strengths because of the way you've been able to harness them and use them in life.
I think, I would never have launched my business 20 years ago without ADHD. It's the taking the risks. It's taking the risks. It's also that that's really the really strong sense of justice. So, and I was tricky. I remember being a kid and the pain and if I thought something was wrong or someone was being mistreated or, standing up for stuff, I didn't like the fact, at little prep school that everyone had to be weighed every Friday. So I got my class, this is age 8. So no one got weighed. We refused. It's sort of, I was always kind of, I had a job in Kuwait at a hotel. My parents lived there before university and it was day one. It was like the Crown Plaza, and the manager phoned up my mum and said, we've got a problem. And she turned out and said, what? And she looked down, because the manager's office are up and they're, looking down at the pool and stuff. And so what am I looking at? And I'd got all the Filipino staff to strike from the gym because they weren't being paid enough. And he went, I kind of admire her, but you need to explain to her that, the Filipinos working in Kuwait and on the pay side of things. So that job lasted a day. It kind of, there was, there was always, I think there was always a fight. I was always fighting. And that's it. That adds to the exhaustion as well. So I think, I'm much less that now. I just sort of, or I kind of can feel the fight and go, I don't need to. I don't need to do that one. So I think, as a kid, it was, it was fight after fight after fight going on. That was pretty tight. That and risk take. I would do everything. There wasn't that kind of sense of danger, just wasn't, it wasn't there. And I still, I do crazy adventure races around the world every year. I need it. I think because if I don't, the thing is I did so much sport at school, and I look back and think if I didn't do that level of sport, then I would have just gone down another avenue. So I was lucky to have that, because I remember, girls, smoked and drank and would go down in the woods and stuff. And I would just sit there chatting to them, never had any interest in smoking or having a drink. I'd be the only one that didn't. But a lot of that was the sport. So because I didn't, so that helped a lot on that front. Yeah, I think that's it. I think the risk taking, that sense of justice, the not taking no for an answer, the way you think is that critical thinking of someone just saying, well, that's just the way it is. That's like a red rag to bull to me. Or you can't do that. If someone says can't, I'm like, my brain goes in, well, how can I? We have that saying in our house. You use it all the time. If someone says can't, they're like, there's no such thing as can't. Yeah, so you have all that as well, that you're just constantly, you're able to, you don't see the negative, you don't see the failures, because it's not a failure, because you've just found another way to do something. So failures and things or mistakes don't stop you. Yeah, I'm like, another phrase that I taught my kids from an early age was shit happens, because it just does. I had to go through a phase of the little one saying it a lot and over-explaining it and going, but it happens. Shit actually happens, because it just happens. I'm like, all right, we've got the point. But that's it. That's just how you do it. Oh, it's happened. Screw up, made a mistake, and you're still going. You don't, I think the normal brain sort of stop sometimes, and that would stop people in their tracks. And where do you go from there? And it's like, oh, well, it's failed, so it's not there's no point in carrying on. Whereas we just, we'll just keep going.
Yeah. I'm smiling listening to you, Emma, honestly, because so many of those things resonate deeply with me, like you said about the fight or that sense of justice. But also I think getting to that age now where you're like, yeah, I just don't need to have that fight. But then I smiled also because you said about the things that you organised at school, and it made me think of my daughter, because I think it was only last year that she organised basically a strike where she had everybody downing tools because she was furious about, I think it was like lack of playtime or loss of break time or something like that. And when her class teacher was speaking to me about it, I was just smiling because I think they were quite taken aback. They'd not seen this side of her. And I was like, oh my God, I love it. I love it. She literally had rallied everybody. She'd gone in with a petition. She'd had everyone sign it. And you have to really admire that, don't you? I want that kind of fighting spirit to go through with her through life.
It is brilliant. That's it, isn't it? You want it, and you can just, and also they won't listen to you. There's no, I kind of say I have to sort of walk behind and kind of gently guide without them realizing my hands are on their backs and helping, you know what I mean? Because if you try and tell them, what to do, and you have to kind of let them, I have to sit there and watch them, nearly burning the house down, thinking, I don't need my help, but you just wait, and then they go, oh, I can't do it. Can you just help me with this? It's sort of on their terms.
Yeah, being the safety net, isn't it? You said at the beginning of all of that, and then we obviously continued the conversation, but you said if it wasn't for ADHD, you wouldn't have started your business. So how have your ADHD strengths and traits shaped your career and your business?
I think, because the thing is, my business, sort of women's sexuality and leveling the playing field of like, if boys can do it, why can't we? And that again is that the ADHD of doing it in the first place, being so angry that I'm wanting to rebalance the world and go, well, if they can do it, I can do it, and kind of create a world that flipped the norm on its head, where women, we made the first move, we had the power, it was about us, and it's sort of that, that very much is that sense of justice and that. And going and people going, it's a crazy idea and it'll never work, and what you're doing, it's disgusting, and losing friends, but that again, it's that the more that happened, the more my brain goes, screw you, I'll show you. So it just fires you up even more. Even now, when someone's rude or abusive, which is regularly, it kind of it stokes the fire to go. And I always say, it's 20 years on and there's still a whole load of people to prove wrong out there. So so you can see on that front, it's very clear why I did what I did, and actually didn't listen to the people around me, the haters and it didn't even cross my mind, like on the personal attack front and the abuse and stuff, because it was sort of, I was on a mission and still I still am on a mission, and that mission is bigger than me. And that's, so you don't take, there's no ego, it's not there's no ego to it. You're just when you get on that, the runway and you're off, there's no one that can stop you on that front. So that, and because it's, it's that the forefront of women's sexuality and doing stuff before anyone else does, it's constantly evolving, and we're constantly, we're changing as society's changing and quicker than them. So I'm like, you can see, it's that again, you can see ahead what's going to happen. So you build stuff and I always say there's like a 10-year lag on people catching up to, what we're doing, which seems madness, to then 5-10 years on, it's like, actually it becomes the norm. So so it lets you on all those, on that front. And we're constantly creating new concepts and launching cruises next year, and we're looking for a hotel. So it's sort of like a startup, new business the whole time. That's just, and we're always fighting fires. We're in a case of, we can't have, couldn't have insurance, couldn't have a bank account for a while. It's sort of, there's the group, the main team name in our Slack channel I call Gladiators. So, the Gladiators channel on our work Slack thing is, because I'm like, everyone's like gladiators. It's just constantly, which fire are we going to put out now? Which fight are we going to have? And so I think, it's sort of, it all fits really. If you know how we work, our brains work, the whole world, the KK world that's been built is sort of, has been built to fit me. For sure.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I guess you've created it for that exact reason, right? It's byproduct of who you are in that sense. And it was interesting when you were saying there about 20 years and you think, God, you guys, I mean, even that it's still really leading the way now, but 20 years ago, that was so significant, wasn't it? And as you said, everybody's still catching up, and this is almost like a new startup for you every single day because you've got all of these ideas. How do you balance that now? Because obviously we were talking earlier on about that overwhelm and the twitching and the other elements that exist in our lives, like 3 neurospicy children and perimenopause and all those things. So what do you do? Is it the environment? How do you focus on your kind of overall well-being alongside all your amazing achievements to date, but plans for the business to go forward?
I think, do you know what it is? I've always, and I didn't meet my husband until I was 35. So, and I had this is my way, and kind of selfish sort of, and this big group called Sisterhood. It's like loads of women and doing the races. And, I was like, this is my world. This is what I do. And I think, and I call it being unapologetically selfish, and women are really bad at doing that and losing themselves and losing who you were before you had kids and before you were a wife. And, and it's hard sometimes because, we can easily lose ourselves because we are the ones that do all the, have the EQ and the emotional side and look after everyone and anything. But I make a point of, I go away on trips. I go away for some weekends. I try and get to London once a week. And, for a night, there's always things on. I had to be in London the last 2 nights. I think that just keeping me has been a big thing. So, as I said, being selfish, and selfish is a word that is, as women were taught, that's a bad word. You shouldn't be selfish, but actually you should be selfish. And because if you're happy, then your hubby's happy and your kids are happy. And so doing stuff for me, and also, again, exercise. So that's a big part of me. And I think, again, that exercise, people do, a lot of people give up exercise, but you got to do it for the right reasons. You're not doing it to lose weight. You have to do it for you, to feel good in you. And that way you just, as a habit, you'll keep it going. I love reform and Pilates. I've been doing that for over 20 years. It's my thing, and no one gets in the way of that. If people want meetings, it's like, I try and do that 2-3 mornings a week, and it's always straight after the school run. It's like, I will not have a meeting at 10 o'clock or between 9 and 10, even if it's like the bloody Queen or the king, the king, that it's, it's sort of, you have to dig your heels and go, these are my things that are non-negotiable, and I do for me. And walking the dog, doing calls where I walk the dog. I think it's things you just have to make habits and put into place that you're just being selfish and doing for you. And even though you feel guilty, because I always say, I feel guilty every minute of every day. It's sort of, I could be doing more work, I could be with the kids more, I'm not giving my husband enough attention. It's so, it's that juggle, and people say, oh, how do you do it all? It's amazing. It's like, very badly. And actually, and sort of, when I don't do any of it at its full potential that you just have to come to that acceptance that you're doing enough and you're doing the best I can do, and compromise. And that's the thing. I compromise in all aspects of it, and have an amazing team and work-wise, and could I be doing a lot more, but I can't do that with 3 kids. And in the same way, I want to be able to do the school pickups, and be able to, if they've got an assembly at midday, or have a football match at 1 PM, I want to be able to see it. I want to be able to go. So you kind of, it's that making peace with the balance that you have and you want. So what do you want? And I think that is that definition of success, isn't it? Where the old school definition, and it's very patriarchal, is, if you're successful, you've got a big house, you earn loads of money. And, that, but actually, to me, that's not success. Success to me, because to me, a lot of the time that comes with that you've compromised in a case of, a lot of women I know with loads of money weren't there for their kids when they were little. They were at work from 7 AM till 10 PM, and they might live in a massive house with lots of money, but one of their big regrets is that they couldn't be there. They didn't have that time when the kids were little to go and experience, be present. Whereas my definition of success is being able to have it all but with the, but having compromised in all the areas. So to have that balance. And so that to me is sort of, I've been successful because I've been able to be present with the kids whilst being a CEO of a business that's growing, and at the same time go and do my stuff. And maybe my husband gets a bit of attention in the middle of that somewhere, but yeah.
Somewhere. It's so inspiring listening to you, Emma, because I think, I'm sure everyone listening can relate to that guilt. And I still struggle with the judgment around selfishness. Like if I take time for myself, like you said, going on a trip or being out for an evening. And I recently just went away on quite a long trip with my mum, actually, to visit my aunt, her sister, for her 80th birthday, and really sort of having to justify that to myself. But actually, I think you're right. It's really important to exist in your own right and sort of protect that, because I think when you were saying about, your reformer Pilates thing and that being a non-negotiable, I thought, oh yeah, I'm gonna really take a leaf out of your book, because I'm super passionate like you about exercise. It's so fundamental. Like when you're young, you do it for vanity reasons, and then you get to our age and you're like, no, this is so much more for my brain. But yet when I'm really busy and I'm overwhelmed and I've got that kind of swollen brain I was talking about earlier, I think it's the first thing to go. And so I'm listening to you thinking, I'm going to go into next year with that sense of, no, these are my non-negotiables. And even right down to how you were defining success. I found that very inspirational to listen to. And you've definitely given me a lot of pause for thought. And the fact that you are present for your children and you're able to do all of those things alongside phenomenal success is an incredible thing. And I just wondered, sort of, as a mum of 3 children, how has, I guess, your journey with ADHD changed the way you think about parenting and how you do connect with them to make you want to be that present mum for all those things?
Yeah, I think, I think of having, when you go down the whole of having neurospicy kids, and it's like Bernardo's do amazing courses or mind works that kind of I've been put on by the school or the family services, local and stuff. You that awareness that makes you more aware of yourself. It's maybe more aware of, like, my husband, because obviously they're a mashup of the two of us, and it makes you catch yourself, because it'd be easy to behave the way we're kind of programmed to behave. And, it's a little thing, just getting, when you get cross with them, it's sort of their freeze mode, the meltdowns in the morning trying to get my son to school, and the anxiety and things get flung, and the language that comes out to me, and the abuse, and it's horrible. And it's so easy to be angry. It would be so easy to go in and be angry, anger back, and it's being able to just take that step back and take the emotion out of it. And they say, ignore the behavior, don't ignore the child. And it's sort of, it's kind of, you're having to, it's properly stopping myself all the time. And it's not operating on autopilot and having that awareness to try. It's not perfect, but just the, little things and the language we use when we speak to them, it's so easy to be critical. And, and they say it's something like, ADHD kids it's something like 80% more criticism than other kids, like negative language. Oh, you're so, from everything, it's so messy, you're a pain, when that's constantly, you have to, I'm always like, I'm not perfect. These things come out. And I'm like, crap, if you say it enough times, it sticks. And then as an adult, you're like, well, no wonder that, because that's what they all got told the whole time. They're this, and it's like with us, you're too bossy, you're too aggressive, you're too opinionated. It's still in my bones, where I'm like, I catch myself sometimes going, oh, do people think, oh, look, she's full of herself, she thinks she's amazing. It's sort of, I don't like the praise side, because I think it is that messaging is still very in my bones. And that's when I have to slap myself inside, one of the little people. I think that's that with the kids. It's when you're aware. I think that's the beauty, that we are so much more aware than our parents, the generation. So and the effects that it is. It's being careful. Even Mum went on but she went on a course that was for grandparents of autistic kids. She went on a course one.
That's amazing.
And said it was fascinating. And it really, it sort of helped. But everything from, again, with the autistic side is, sometimes I've always said, like, James lives on his own cloud like Away with the Fairies, who always jokes about it and his best mate jokes about it. But actually that is, and Lily, my middle one, is the same. You kind of go, hello, anyone there? But actually it can take, like they say that on the school, it's like count to 9 in your head to then get a response, where it's, I go 3,000 miles per hour. It's like, put your shoes on, and 2 seconds later, put your shoes on. Actually it's sort of, it hasn't computed the speed at which I compute. So so we've got the mashup, the mashup in our family of the sloths and then the tigers that just,
I love that. I do love that. And I was thinking when you were talking then, it took me right back to the comment you made much earlier in our conversation about wanting to scoop that 11-year-old version of yourself up. And I think that's kind of why we do what we do with our children, isn't it? Because it's a little bit for ourselves when we were younger and wanting to make sure that we're doing it differently for them. So for parents listening who are on this ADHD journey or neurodiversity journey of neurospicy kids who wish they had a crystal ball, what kind of positive messages or piece of advice would you like to leave them with?
I think, to me, it's that superpower. And it's crazy, because people have used that quite a lot now, that the superpower, it's the language we use to our kids. And it's very, and I've seen it with people whose kids have been diagnosed ADHD. They then label it as if it's a problem and an excuse to not achieve and to not go and smash that. It's like, oh, she's got ADHD. And I had one girl, it's like, she was being a complete bitch. And she, little, about 9. And she went, oh, well, it's because I've got ADHD. And I went, I've got ADHD. It doesn't make you a bitch. It doesn't make you unkind. You know what I mean? It's not an excuse to, and I think that's it. I think, and it's a lazy way, I think, to kind of on the parenting front to go, oh, they've got the label, they've got the diagnosis. So, we don't need to try. It's the excuse. I think it's the language we use to our kids, that it's an amazing, yes, it's hard, but it's also an unbelievable. We have, my 7-year-old will say that she's got a special brain. She said the other day to me, I've got like a supercomputer in my head. And I think that's it. I think it's the talking to them and explaining it to them, not in a like really serious mode, but as it comes up, so they don't think they're different. So actually it's sort of, it not becomes cool, but because it is hard and exhausting for a lot of people, but it's something that actually has massive pros to it. And it's just finding the tools, and also for them to realise sort of, it's like, I know they get overwhelmed in social situations, and it's just sort of being aware that they can go, I want to go, so the 7-year-old, she's the first to go, I want to go home now. And she'll just stand there and go, I'm done. It's a bit like I am. I do that. I'm just sort of having a brilliant time, and then suddenly I'll go, right, no, my head will just go, I need to leave. So I think it's just helping them understand it and know that there's nothing wrong with them, but that actually it's an amazing thing to have. Most of the top entrepreneurs in the world are neurodiverse. A lot of the world wouldn't, all the innovation and everything and the world moving on has come from, neurospicy people who have taken the risk, who haven't, who won't take no for an answer, who there's no such thing as can't, who are the optimists, who will keep going when everything around them is telling them not to. That's it. I think it's the taking the shame away and the disorder, and that there's something wrong with them, and turning it into a positive. It's the spin on it that, and showing them as well. It's like, there's some good books out there, and ADHD 360 have they're beyond the label. And actually I went on it, and my kids watched the episode because it's on Bloomberg, so it's not adult, it's sweary and you've got some amazing people on there, from sports people, chefs, about talking about their childhood, but what it's made them achieve, and made them achieve now. That I just think, kids can actually watch and go, look what we can be and do. And I think it's that, I love it. I always use it with the girls. If you can't see it, you can't be it. So I think it's that the visibility, and more people now who are successful or like famous, from the singers to the actors to the sports people, business people, all coming out and being very open. So it's a case of like, if you can see it, you can be it. So if they can do it and achieve all these things, then kids seeing that can, aspire to go, well, actually, it's not a hindrance. And look what I can achieve, because if they've achieved it, I can achieve it. So I think as parents, it's that. But also getting help for yourself, because it is exhausting. It's unbelievably exhausting. And I think you've got to be in the best shape you can be in to parent these kids. And, I've done several courses and read several books, and most of them are, they're all free courses. Local family centres always have courses running that you can put your name down for and stuff. Like I said, Bernardo's and Mindworks and things. So it's like educating yourself, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It is about educating yourself. And I love what you said there. I think it's true. It is the spin, and we get to be those role models, don't we? It was the same with my ADHD Beyond the Label episode. I watched that with my kids because I want to change the narrative, because I think if we can give them the language around understanding their own brain, then they get the chance to believe in themselves and what they can achieve, because it doesn't take away from the struggles, because the struggles are real, but it's realizing on the other side of that are some amazing strengths, and we got to channel those strengths, because once we get through school and we're free in the world, then we get to shape the future. And as you said right at the beginning, unknowingly create a world for yourself that works for your brain, that brings out the best in yourself. And I just think that's such a powerful and very positive message to finish with today. So Emma, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. It's been fun.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. If you'd like to find out more about Emma, Killing Kittens and the Sisterhood, then please do check out our show notes below for more information. Or if you'd like to find out about how I can help support you and your children with personalised ADHD coaching, then please do head to allaboardadhd.com. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok at allaboardadhd. Most importantly, if you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please can you follow and review All Aboard wherever you're listening today, to help other parents find this podcast and welcome them aboard our journey too. Thank you for listening to All Aboard ADHD.